Now, carbon markets are trading systems in which carbon credits are sold and bought. Companies can use carbon markets to compensate for their greenhouse gas emissions by purchasing carbon credits from entities that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But how does it work? Brian Nyangena from Verst tells us how.
The simple way of being able to say it is that we have experienced the challenges of, like for instance, the last year, it's been a very dry season, right? A lot of farmers, a lot of people have actually experienced this, and the effects of that have especially affected farmers. So what I will put carbon markets to be is, it's a mechanism to make sure that we are compensated for efforts that we are taking towards avoiding the effects of climate change. I will give you an example. Assume you're a farmer. You're practicing certain farming practices. You're planting trees or you're doing certain farming practices that are absorbing carbon from the atmosphere. For that effort, you need to be compensated. That's been a very clear conversation that we've been having, and most communities don't know how they begin to start with that. So the carbon markets are the mechanism that enable you to continue practicing those practices, if I can put it that way, so that you are then able to contribute to the climate change conversation. The challenge that we're having right now is an information gap, which is why we as Verst Carbon are coming into this conversation. We feel like the market is out there, everyone can participate in it. It's just that people don't know that this is an area that they can get into. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of capacity building to make the community understand that. There are challenges. Because of that lack of information, you're finding a lot of scrupulous players coming into the market, taking advantage of communities. So you're finding them telling them you do X, Y, Z, they sign off the rights for their carbon credits without fully understanding what it is that they're doing. And we applaud the government for passing the climate bill just like a month or so back. They're trying to put community first. In the new mechanism, they've taken, I think it's 25% or 40% that's going to go back to the community that's implementing this framework. So we are seeing the government take a proactive step towards pushing this. You're seeing a lot of private sector players like ourselves within the continent, not outside the continent, within the continent, taking a proactive role to be able to guide the community to understand what their rights are and how they can be part of this conversation. We need to embed this into our curriculum. From the start, like when you're going through school, we have to prioritize the role and I'm a father right now, and I wouldn't want my kids to go through this. So just being able to make them understand where that is going to go is a very important step. Embed that into a communication framework. So that's the long-term plan. The short-term plan is try to take a proactive step towards capacity building to the community, which means go to the community, involve them, figure out how it's the best way for you to communicate to them, for them to participate in this journey. Without the community, we're not moving forward. So we are trying to take that active role. We've been lucky enough to go to communities in Nandi, we've gone to Uganda, trying to talk to people at the community level, breaking it down to them to understand what carbon markets are. We had gone to Nandi and we were talking to farmers. The first moment I started mentioning carbon credits, you could see the room was down. So how the messaging should be was, they are facing challenges with milk production, for instance. And if they adopted certain feedstock practices, the milk production will have gone up and they will have been able to participate in the carbon angle. What they wanted to hear was, if you do X, Y, Z, this is a cheap way for you to increase your milk production and we will subsidize it. That's all they needed to know. So it's just how you communicate that message to the community is very important, and it has to be a proactive step for every specific institution. Then once that has been done really well, the other frameworks that will be embedded upon it. Finance is a challenge right now, so just being able to channel finance in the right way and then take that step further and further upon. In terms of the climate summit, there was a very interesting announcement that was done yesterday where the UAE delegation committed to making $450 million worth of carbon credit purchases up to 2030, in the lead up to 2030. We as Verst Carbon have been very instrumental in this carbon discussion. We were lucky enough to bring one of our partners to the first deal room on Monday. So there's a deal room that's going on where investors and different players are coming in, and we managed to take our project into that setup. They're looking to raise a significant amount of money in the biochar economy. So we're very big in doing that. We have a booth at the Climate Summit as well. It's been very busy. We've been trying to capacity build for people to understand what this is. Looking forward where Verst Carbon is going to be, there's something called the African Carbon Market Initiative. If time will allow me, I will have gotten into it. But it's very integral towards pushing this conversation and making sure all the stakeholders within the carbon market space are guiding that. Verst Carbon is at the heart of that as well, working with all these different players to make sure that we are embedding technology towards solving some of these challenges: capacity building, access to finance, repatriation mechanism to make sure that the revenues from carbon credits goes to the community. The African Carbon Market Initiative was something that was set up almost a year ago at the COP27. We were among the 10 lighthouses that were inaugurated at COP27, and then they've continued towards this journey. The 450 million commitment that was made was through that initiative, the African Carbon Market Initiative. It's an initiative by Sustainable Energy for All, United Nations High-Level Champions, Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, Rockefeller Foundation, the ministries from different countries, and the agenda is we need to scale up the participation of the African continent in carbon markets. And in doing so, they're bringing all different stakeholders towards this conversation. We are part of those players who are doing that. We are among the first African players who are taking a participation in this space. So that's how we come in. They're talking to the governments. They have, I think, 9 countries that have signed up towards this initiative, and they're now taking that proactive role of influencing the regulation conversation, trying to create an enabling environment for these communities to meet up with investors and make sure that in the coming months heading to 2030, this community ends up being a vibrant ecosystem. And that's where we come in with them, trying to figure out how can technology create all this efficiency. Transparency is at the heart of carbon markets. Majority of the challenges you've had are coming from the point where not enough transparency and integrity has been in the market. There's been a lot of cases, and I'm sure most people have heard about that. But we're now trying to figure out how do we then use technology to bridge up some of these gaps. How do you make it easy for a person to access an investor from the US, from UAE, from Australia, to bring in capital to help them bring out their projects without having a lot of middlemen who are taking up to 90% of carbon revenues. So that's the thing that we are trying to figure out, how do we solve that? And for that, there's a lot of moving pieces that have to be put together, and that's what the African Carbon Market Initiative is trying to do, taking that proactive role to make sure everyone is at the center of this discussion, and we're pushing that discussion forward.
Well, that's a wrap for Africa Speaks. Thank you for watching. My name is Fatihia Mohammed Noor, and I'll leave you with the proverb of the day.